The morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Manhattan office building as Sarah Martinez adjusted her blazer and checked her phone. 10 years of climbing these same marble steps. 10 years of building relationships that had transformed a struggling consulting firm into a Middle Eastern powerhouse. She smiled at the text from Ahmad, her biggest client in Dubai, confirming their afternoon video call about the expansion project. The reception desk buzzed with activity as she entered, the familiar sounds of morning preparations filling the air. Her fluency in Arabic, earned through years of study and cultural immersion, had opened doors that others couldn't even see. The dedication had cost her relationships, social events, and countless hours of personal time, but it had also made her indispensable. "Good morning, Sarah," called out Jennifer from accounting, her voice carrying the usual Monday morning weariness. "How was your weekend?" Sarah paused, remembering her Saturday spent video calling with clients across different time zones, ensuring their projects stayed on track. The coffee maker gurgled in the break room while early arrivals shuffled past, their faces still creased with sleep. She had always been different from her colleagues at Sterling & Associates, seeing untapped potential where others saw only complications. Her weekend had been productive, finalizing details for 3 major contracts that would generate millions in revenue for the company that was about to betray her. Her office on the 20th floor overlooked the Hudson River, walls lined with certificates of appreciation from clients whose names carried weight in international business circles. Each plaque told a story of trust built over years, of cultural bridges constructed one conversation at a time. The phone rang constantly. Dubai, Riyadh, Kuwait City, voices that had become as familiar as family. Her assistant had already organized her schedule. 4 client calls, 2 contract reviews, and a presentation for the board about expanding their Middle Eastern operations. The irony would soon become apparent that they were about to destroy the very foundation of that expansion. The morning sun cast long shadows across her desk, illuminating the family photos from clients who had invited her to their homes, their weddings, their celebrations. At 9:15, her assistant knocked with unusual hesitancy, her normally confident demeanor replaced by nervous energy. "Sarah, Mr. Sterling wants to see you in his office immediately," she said, avoiding eye contact. The tone was wrong, the timing suspicious, creating a knot of anxiety in Sarah's stomach. She noticed the security guard standing near the elevator, his presence unexplained and ominous in the morning routine. Something was about to change, and every instinct told her it wouldn't be good. The familiar office sounds seemed muffled now, as if she were already becoming disconnected from the world she'd helped build. The walk to Sterling's corner office felt longer than usual, each step echoing off the polished floors like a countdown to doom. Through the glass walls, she could see her colleagues avoiding eye contact, their faces carrying the uncomfortable knowledge that comes before bad news. The receptionist's phone buzzed incessantly, probably clients calling for their regular check-ins, unaware that their primary contact was about to be severed. The elevator music played its cheerful tune, a stark contrast to the dread building in her chest. She straightened her shoulders, drawing on years of high-stakes negotiations to maintain her composure. Whatever was coming, she would face it with the same professionalism that had built her reputation. The hallway to Sterling's office stretched before her like a gauntlet, executive portraits watching from their frames with painted eyes that seemed to judge. Her heels clicked against the marble floor in a rhythm that reminded her of a funeral march. The mahogany door stood slightly ajar, revealing glimpses of figures inside waiting for her arrival. She could hear the murmur of voices, the rustle of papers, the sound of corporate machinery preparing to crush individual careers. The morning that had started with promise now felt heavy with impending catastrophe. She paused at the threshold, took a deep breath, and stepped into the room that would change everything. Sterling's office reeked of expensive cologne and nervous sweat as Sarah entered to find him flanked by HR Director Patricia Wong and a security guard she didn't recognize. The mahogany desk between them seemed to stretch like a battlefield, papers scattered across its surface with the chaotic desperation of someone trying to justify the unjustifiable. Patricia avoided her eyes, focusing instead on a manila folder thick with documentation that would seal Sarah's fate. The morning light streaming through the windows cast harsh shadows across their faces, making them look like executioners rather than colleagues. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Sarah assessed the situation, her years of reading people and situations telling her this was already over. The security guard's presence confirmed what the formal setup had already suggested. This wasn't a meeting, but a termination. "Sarah, please sit down." Sterling's voice carried none of its usual warmth, the tone of a man who had rehearsed this conversation but still felt uncomfortable delivering it. "We need to discuss some organizational changes that will affect your position here." The words hung in the air like smoke, suffocating and impossible to ignore. Sarah remained standing, her years of experience in high-stakes negotiations telling her that sitting would put her at a disadvantage. She could see the sweat beading on Sterling's forehead despite the air conditioning, his hands trembling slightly as he shuffled through papers he clearly hadn't read. The power dynamic was obvious. They feared her reaction, which told her everything about how badly they'd miscalculated. Organizational changes? Sarah's voice was steady, professional, even as her mind raced through possibilities and implications. "Are we restructuring the Middle Eastern division that generates 40% of our revenue?" The question was strategic, a way to gauge how much they understood about what they were about to lose. Sterling shifted uncomfortably, his hands fidgeting with a pen that clicked rhythmically against the desk like a nervous heartbeat. Patricia cleared her throat, preparing to deliver the rehearsed explanation that would justify the unjustifiable. The security guard remained motionless, a silent reminder that this conversation had only one possible outcome. Sarah's phone buzzed insistently in her pocket, probably Omar from the Kuwait deal, wondering about the contract revisions they'd discussed Friday. "Sarah, after careful consideration, we've decided to eliminate your position effective immediately," Sterling said, the words coming out rushed and rehearsed like a script he'd memorized, but didn't believe. "This isn't personal, it's purely financial. The company needs to reduce costs, and unfortunately, that means some difficult decisions." The corporate speak couldn't disguise the fundamental stupidity of firing their most profitable employee. Security shifted behind her, a reminder that this wasn't a negotiation, but a predetermined execution. The manila folder in Patricia's hands contained the paperwork that would sever 10 years of relationship building in a single signature. Sarah's mind immediately went to her clients, to the trust that had taken years to build and could be shattered in a single phone call. Her phone buzzed again, more insistently this time. Definitely Omar, probably followed by Ahmad and the rest of her client network who depended on her for their morning briefings. "How long do I have to transition my clients to ensure continuity of service?" she asked, though she suspected the answer would reveal their complete misunderstanding of what they were destroying. The relationships she'd built weren't transferable assets that could be handed off like files in a cabinet. Sterling and Patricia exchanged glances, their discomfort growing as they realized they hadn't thought through the practical implications. The security guard checked his watch, clearly eager to move this process along to its inevitable conclusion. Sarah's professional demeanor remained intact, even as she began calculating the nuclear option that would teach them the true cost of their decision. "Your access has been terminated effective immediately," Patricia said, her voice carrying the weight of corporate policy, blind to the human cost of their decision. "Security will escort you out after you collect your personal belongings from your office." The finality in her tone suggested this was non-negotiable, a done deal that couldn't be undone by argument or appeal. Sarah's mind immediately went to her clients, to the contracts in progress, to the millions of dollars in deals that depended on relationships they clearly didn't understand. The corporate lawyers had crafted this termination to protect the company from lawsuits, but they'd forgotten something crucial about the nature of trust in Arab business culture. Her phone continued its relentless buzzing, a symphony of relationships they were about to lose. The security guard stepped forward, ready to escort her out of the life she'd built, unaware that he was walking her toward their destruction. The cardboard box felt heavier with each personal item Sarah packed under the watchful eye of security, 10 years of achievements reduced to a few photographs and mementos. Her coffee mug from her first client in Riyadh, a small Arabic dictionary that had started her journey into a world Sterling and Associates was about to lose. The framed photo of her with Sheikh Abdullah at the groundbreaking ceremony for the Dubai project, a relationship worth $50 million that couldn't be replicated or transferred. Her colleagues watched from their cubicles, some with sympathy, others with the relief of survivors in a corporate downsizing. The security guard tapped his foot impatiently, clearly following a script that treated her like a potential thief, rather than the woman who had built their most profitable division. Her computer screen went black as IT remotely disabled her access, cutting her off from the client database she'd built from scratch through years of relationship building. The elevator descended for the last time, each floor marking another step away from the corporate world that had just betrayed her. Her phone exploded with notifications as her clients, accustomed to her prompt responses and proactive communication, tried to reach her for their Monday morning check-ins. Ahmad's message was particularly urgent. The Dubai project needed her signature on the revised terms by end of business, a deal that would generate millions in revenue. The irony was bitter. They'd fired her on the busiest day of the week, when her absence would be most immediately felt. The elevator music played its cheerful tune, a stark contrast to the corporate funeral she was attending. She could feel the security guard's eyes on her, making sure she didn't try to contact anyone or cause a scene, unaware that the real scene was about to unfold without her presence. The Manhattan street felt different as she emerged with her box of belongings tucked under her arm like the remnants of a life she'd never expected to end. Food trucks lined the avenue, their owners calling out lunch specials to the crowd of office workers who still had jobs to return to. The familiar rhythm of the city continued, indifferent to the seismic shift that had just occurred in her world and was about to occur in Sterling and Associates. Yellow cabs honked their way through traffic, delivery trucks blocked intersections, and pedestrians hurried past with their own concerns and destinations. The corporate towers stretched skyward around her, monuments to ambition and success that she was no longer part of. She stood on the sidewalk, holding her cardboard box, feeling simultaneously liberated and devastated by the morning's events. Her phone rang with an international number she recognized immediately. Omar from Kuwait, his voice carrying the warmth of someone who considered her not just a business contact, but a friend. "Sarah, Habibti, I've been trying to reach you all morning. Are you all right?" The concern in his voice was genuine, reflecting the personal relationships that had made her so effective in ways Sterling and Associates would never understand. These weren't just clients. They were people who trusted her with their investments, their dreams, their futures, and their family businesses. The Arabic endearment he used, Habibti, meaning my dear, represented a level of trust and affection that couldn't be transferred to some random replacement. She could hear the confusion in his voice, the worry that something had gone wrong with their carefully planned partnership. The loyalty she'd earned through years of cultural sensitivity and business acumen was about to become Sterling and Associates' worst nightmare. Standing on the corner of Fifth Avenue, Sarah made a decision that would change everything, her mind shifting from victim to victor in a single moment of clarity. Instead of going home to sulk or commiserate with friends, she headed to the nearest coffee shop to begin her counterattack. The corporate world had taught her that loyalty was a one-way street, but her clients operated in a different paradigm where relationships mattered more than corporate policies. If Sterling and Associates thought they could simply replace her with someone else, they were about to learn the true value of trust in the Arab business world. Her phone continued ringing with international numbers, each call representing millions of dollars in revenue that was about to walk out the door. The cardboard box under her arm felt lighter now, not the weight of an ending, but the foundation of a new beginning. She smiled for the first time that morning, realizing that her former employers had just handed her the keys to their destruction. The coffee shop on the corner buzzed with typical Manhattan energy as Sarah chose a table by the window, her view encompassing the corporate towers where her former colleagues were about to discover the true cost of their decision. The barista, a young woman with kind eyes and multiple piercings, brought her a double espresso without being asked, perhaps sensing she needed the caffeine for what lay ahead. Her laptop opened to reveal a clean desktop. Her corporate email and client management system were gone, but her personal relationships remained intact and more valuable than ever. The morning sun slanted through the windows, casting everything in golden light that felt like a promise of better things to come. Around her, other professionals worked on their own projects, unaware that they were witnessing the birth of what would become the most successful Arab-American consulting firm in the industry. Her phone buzzed with another international call, and Sarah smiled as she prepared to answer it, knowing that each conversation was another nail in Sterling & Associates' coffin. Within 2 hours, the pattern became clear as Sarah's phone rang constantly with increasingly agitated clients demanding to know why their trusted advisor was suddenly unreachable through official channels. Khalid from the Saudi construction project was the first to understand, his voice carrying the indignation of someone who'd worked with Sarah for 7 years. "They fired you, didn't they? Those idiots don't understand the first thing about our business culture or the relationships we've built." His anger was palpable even across the international connection, the kind of fury that comes from watching valuable partnerships destroyed by corporate stupidity. The coffee shop around her continued its busy rhythm, but Sarah was focused entirely on the phone calls that were reshaping her future. She could hear the disappointment in Khalid's voice, not just at her termination, but at the cultural insensitivity that had prompted it. The trust she'd built through years of learning Arabic customs, respecting religious practices, and understanding family dynamics couldn't be replaced by some corporate drone with a business degree. The domino effect began immediately as news of her termination spread through the tight-knit network of Arab business leaders who had made Sterling & Associates their primary American consulting firm. Ahmad called from Dubai, his voice tight with controlled anger that spoke of deep cultural offense. "Sarah, I just spoke to someone called Tom, who claims to be handling our account now. He mispronounced my name 3 times, called our project that Middle East thing, and asked if we celebrate Christmas." The cultural insensitivity that Sarah had spent years educating her colleagues about was now on full display, confirming every stereotype about American business arrogance. She could hear the frustration in Ahmad's voice, the kind of anger that comes from being reduced to a stereotype by people who should know better. The $40 million Dubai project that she'd spent 2 years developing was about to evaporate because of one poorly handled phone call. Her replacement clearly hadn't received even basic cultural sensitivity training, let alone the deep understanding necessary to work with high-net-worth Arab clients. By afternoon, the news had spread through WhatsApp groups and family networks across the Middle East, with messages of support and outrage flooding in from clients who had become friends over the years. These weren't just business relationships. They were part of a community that valued loyalty above contracts, trust above profits, and personal connections above corporate policies. The Arab business world operated on principles that Sterling & Associates had never understood, despite profiting from them for a decade. Sarah's phone screen showed a constant stream of messages in Arabic and English, each one representing another relationship that her former employer had just lost. The cultural bridge she'd built between 2 worlds was collapsing, and the corporate executives who had fired her were about to discover that some things couldn't be replaced by new hires. Her coffee had gone cold, but she barely noticed, focused entirely on the revolution that was unfolding in her former industry. Her phone rang with a familiar international number that made her heart skip. Fatima al-Rashid from the Sharjah Investment Authority, one of the most powerful women in Middle Eastern finance. "Sarah, this is Fatima. We've been discussing your situation with the other partners across the region, and we have a proposition for you." The voice was professional, but warm, carrying the weight of someone who understood the value of what Sterling & Associates had just thrown away. Fatima's call represented more than just another client relationship. It was an opportunity to build something entirely new, something that would make her former employer irrelevant in the market they dominated. The proposition she was about to hear would transform her from a terminated employee into the founder of a competing firm, with instant credibility and established relationships. Her heart raced as she realized that her termination hadn't been a career ending, but a career transformation, pushed by the very people who had tried to destroy her future. The loyalty she'd earned through years of cultural sensitivity and business acumen was about to become the foundation of her own empire. As the Manhattan afternoon sun slanted through the coffee shop windows, Sarah realized that her termination wasn't an ending, but a beginning of something far more powerful than she'd ever imagined. The relationships she'd built, the trust she'd earned, the cultural bridges she'd constructed, none of that belonged to Sterling and Associates, and they were about to learn that lesson expensively. Her laptop screen glowed with possibility as she began typing her response to Fatima's offer, the words flowing like a river finally freed from its dam. The corporate world had taught her everything about the consulting business, and now she was going to use that knowledge to become their biggest competitor. Sterling and Associates had created their own worst nightmare by firing the one person who understood their most valuable market. Her phone buzzed with another international call, and she smiled as she prepared to answer it, knowing that each conversation was another step toward building something that would make her former employer irrelevant in the industry they'd once dominated. 3 months later, Sarah stood on the balcony of her Dubai office, champagne glass in hand, watching the sun set over the Persian Gulf as she celebrated the launch of Martinez International Consulting. The view was spectacular, but not as spectacular as the client list that had followed her from Sterling and Associates, leaving her former employer scrambling to replace 40% of their revenue. The champagne was Dom Perignon, a gift from Ahmad to celebrate their expanded partnership and the opening of her new firm. Her phone showed missed calls from Sterling himself, desperate attempts to negotiate some kind of arrangement that would salvage his company's Middle Eastern operations. She deleted them without listening, focusing instead on the future she was building with the loyalty and trust that money couldn't buy. The corporate towers of Manhattan seemed very far away now, replaced by the gleaming skyscrapers of Dubai and the promise of a business empire built on the relationships that her former employer had thrown away. The termination that had devastated her that morning in New York had become the foundation of a success story that would be told in business schools for years to come.